You're watching The Hour of Empowerment. Today we are in Season 2, which is Civil Education, and Topic 2, Good Governance, and we're going to have Episode 3, which talks about what it takes to establish or re-establish good governance and your roles. Now, let's revise what we discussed last week. Last week, if you remember, we talked about worldwide governance indicators, the top 5 and the bottom 5 countries, and we compared regions, and also we showed you the Ethiopia's good governance trends and Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index. Daniel Kaufman and his colleagues, they identified 6 indicators to measure good governance worldwide. What are the 6 indicators? First, voice and accountability. Second, political instability and violence. Third, governance effectiveness. Fourth, regulatory burden. Fifth, rule of law. 6, control of corruption. We also showed you the 5 top countries that performed well in terms of good governance: Finland, Denmark, Sweden, New Zealand, Luxembourg, and also the 5 bottom countries: Zimbabwe, North Korea, Sudan, Congo Democratic Republic, and Myanmar. We also compared regions. As you can see, Southern African countries perform better than other regions. In America, North American countries perform better than the other regions, like in Caribbean, Central and Southern America. In Asia, almost the same, but East and South and West Asian countries have a better good governance compared to Central and Southeast Asian countries. In Europe, Northern, Southern, and Western European countries perform better than Eastern European countries. As you can see from the graph, Canada, Australia, Scandinavian countries, and some Western European countries, they have good governance that rates between 90 to 100%. We also evaluated Ethiopia's performance. As you can see, except government effectiveness, the other parameters, they show decline or stagnation. We also shared with you about the Corruption Perception Index of Transparency International. The index scores 177 countries, and they found out that no country has a perfect score, and they concluded that 2/3 of countries score below 50%, and there is a serious worldwide corruption problem. The Corruption Perception Index reminds us that the abuse of power, secret dealings, and bribery, which are signs of poor governance, continue to ravage societies around the world. Now let's talk about establishing or re-establishing good governance. There are factors that are very important to establish good governance. 1, government elected by the people. 2nd, the government that treats citizens as partners. Government that's competent. Government that makes public officials accountable. Government that provides civic education, government that strengthens civil societies, and government that embraces independent and free media, governments that establish institutions and systems, and so on. First, let's talk about elected government. Legitimacy is the key for good governance. If the government is not elected, why it should care about good governance? If they don't know that they can be voted out, they don't provide good governance. They don't become accountable. Citizens as partners. If we want to enjoy good governance, we should have a government that treats its citizens as partners. Citizens should have a very meaningful say beyond casting ballots. The government should be citizen-centered, and it should also gather inputs during the decision-making process from its citizens. Competency to lead. A government should have competency to lead because good governance requires knowledge and experience. That's why if a government wants to establish good governance, it should build its capacity and it should learn continuously. Accountability. A government that aspires to demonstrate good governance should create what? Accountability. It should have clear expectations from its civil servants. It should respect the rule of law and correct wrongdoings immediately. Civic education is also very important. People should be aware about their rights and privileges. That's why they need to have awareness. Awareness is vital. They should also know how to handle when they face bad governance, when they face corruption, and so on and so forth. So a government should have civic education, maybe not alone, but together with other civil societies, and citizens should be taught about the importance of good governance. Not only for citizens, but civil education is also very important for civil servants. Citizens should know how to participate, and also they should know how to challenge when there is no good governance. Strengthening civil society. Civil societies are engines, and they are key stakeholders. And if there is no free society, forget about good governance. It's impossible. But some countries, they have legislations to ban civil societies, let alone to let them flourish and help them establish or re-establish good governance. They ban civil societies. A good recent case is Ethiopian Economics Association, which is not allowed to renew its registration. Independent and free press. Without free expression, you can't really have good governance. You need to have free press that acts like eye and ear to the public. Especially, it is very important to have investigative journalism to find out when there are violations of people's rights, and also when there are some bad governance. The government also should allow independent and free media to have access to information. The last one is institutions. Institutions that educate about good governance. Institutions that scrutinize authorities, and also institutions that make civil servants accountable and also turn wrongs into right. A good example is Ombudsman. The definition of Ombudsman is an official appointed to investigate individuals' complaints against maladministration. It could be a person or office. And its main job is to investigate unfair treatment by authorities. It should be impartial. And Ombudsman has different names in different countries. For example, Parliamentary Commissioner, Commissioner of Complaints, Procurator, Public Advocate. Let's review the history of Ombudsman. It was first established in Sweden in the 18th century. And Denmark, Norway, New Zealand, Great Britain, and France, they had their own version of Ombudsman in the mid-20th century. These days, many countries in the world have Ombudsman office. For example, some of them they have at federal level, some of them at state level. for particular and specific cases. For example, some states, they may have ombudsman office for education, for tax, for drug administration, or tax complaints, and so on and so forth. So, of course, there are lots of challenges. Sometimes this office faces lots of obstacles, but the mere existence of an independent office makes authorities to take decisions very cautiously. Let me give you a case study. An institution of the Ombudsman of Ethiopia. This is its website. Article 55, number 15 of Ethiopian Constitution authorizes the parliament to establish the Ombudsman office. And accordingly, Parliament Proclamation number 211/2000 established Institute of Ombudsman. And they claim that they intervene free of charge at the request of citizens. They say that they help citizens to solve their disputes with regional and federal authorities. They claim that they examine complaints with impartiality, and they are independent parliamentary ombudsman. But as many organizations in Ethiopia, I doubt that they are free of political involvement. Now let's talk about your roles, what you should do to establish or re-establish good governance in your organization and country. 1, demand your governance. 2, participate and engage. 3, influence public policies. 3, organize yourself or join the already existing organizations. Let's talk about demand your good governance, because good governance is your democratic right. You need to demand it because no government or public servant provide you your rights without you demanding it. It requires you, therefore, to understand your legitimate rights, and you need to go to the limits to demand your democratic rights, including good governance. You need to also participate and engage. You need to be proactive, show up, participate and engage, and be part of the solution, because good governance requires you to be part of the solution and contribute your share. Influence public policies. Before public policies are implemented, you should engage and influence policies. Policies while they are at the draft stage. You may need to approach lawmakers, petition, even demonstrate. Organize yourself. You need to organize yourself when you demand good governance. Establish interest groups or join the existing ones. The most important thing is you need to be part of the movement and do that in an organized fashion. Now, I'm suggesting that you should contribute your share. You need to organize yourself, join the already existing organizations, or create your own. I tell you that from my experience. I don't recommend things from just theory. I recommend from my own experience. I myself have done that. That's why I'm recommending you to do it. Let me give you my story. In the early 90s, myself and also my friends, we established a youth association to help our community. Of course, we didn't do perfect things. We failed here and there because there were no organizations that could have mentored, trained, and equipped us. But we tried ourselves. We organized ourselves. When I was at Addis Ababa University, I served my batch, my faculty, and also I was the leader of Addis Ababa University Students Union. We challenged the authorities, we demanded good governance, there were some corruptions, and we challenged them. After graduation, I joined a political party, and I was elected as a Central Committee member, Vice Chairman of the Research Department, and I contributed my share. After coming to the United States here, I also tried to contribute my share with colleagues and friends. Here, as you can see, I am also sharing what I have learned and what I have experienced with you. So what I'm saying is that you may not need to be a youth leader or a student leader or a politician or a business leader. You have great talent and experience. You should use that and engage and organize yourself and establish good governance in your country and in your organization. There are external factors that could contribute towards good governance, but unfortunately, third parties, they support governments that suppress rights, and they give foreign aid without accountability. And governments focus on technical issues. They override rights and they attempt to create good governance without rights. And there is also weak global scrutiny. Now let's talk about supporting governments that suppress rights. Many governments pursue development without rights, and they postpone good governance and rights in the name of what? Development. They pretend that the national crisis they are facing is nothing to do with rights and good governance. And also they think that they can be solved if they get more aid and if they focus on technical issues. That's why they suppress rights in the name of what? Development. Let's talk about foreign aid without accountability. Many private foundations and multinational institutes, they provide aid support in the fight against poverty without making governments accountable. For example, in the case of Ethiopia, aid is politicized. They give aid to their supporters and deny oppositions. And also they abuse aid fundings. Let me give you the account of Professor William Easterly. He challenged status quo. He gave an interview to National Public Radio. They asked him whether billionaire philanthropists are the true champions in the fight against poverty. And he said that Bill Gates is very naive to think that the government of Ethiopia is benevolent and is actually contributing to development. They actually are serial human rights abusers that are destroying development. In his book entitled The Tyranny of Experts, he talked about how technical solutions are parts of the solution, but they are not the missing link. He said that rights issues and governance are very important to alleviate poverty. Here is what he wrote in his book. The conventional approach to economic development is based on a technocratic illusion. The belief that poverty is a purely technical problem amenable to such technical solutions as fertilizers, antibiotics, or nutritional supplements. The technocratic approach ignores what this book will establish as the real cause of poverty, the unchecked power of the state against poor people without rights. Another evidence about ignoring good governance while global organizations supporting some governments is the case of EITI, Extractive Industries Transparency International, which is supposed to promote good governance, accountability, and the involvement of civil societies. Unfortunately, EITI accepted Ethiopia as a candidate recently, and it damaged its image and emboldened the government to continue to inflict civil societies and deny them their influence in establishing good governance, accountability, and so on and so forth. Let me give you a summary before I conclude. Using the 6 worldwide governance indicators, evaluate your country. You can Google, you can make research, and evaluate your country. Is your country performing well in terms of good governance? If your country performs poor, what are the reasons? And also, what kinds of measures should be taken to improve the good governance of your country? The next question is, why do you think Scandinavian countries succeeded? What kinds of institutions exist and lack in your country that should have promoted good governance? And lastly, Does your country has ombudsman? And also, is it independent? As you can see, we discussed about how to establish good governance and your roles, and we enlisted what kind of roles you should play. And I gave you assignment. Do the assignment, and at the same time be expectant for the next discussion on good governance. We have great scholars. We're going to talk about good governance, about aid without accountability, and also the book of William Easterly. Until I see you next week, have a wonderful time. Thank you very much.